I think what we've seen over the past few years is that we don't have one party. I mean, I have never met Richard Leonard, who's the leader of Scottish Labour. Never met him. Jeremy and I would meet very, very rarely. We operate in Wales pretty much autonomously in terms of policy, in terms of what we're doing. We have to. We're a government. We've been in government for 20 years. I was the head of a government for 9 years. So we don't sit there thinking, well, what will they think in London? Of course not. And I think we are in danger of splitting off geographically to different parties. London is so different. One of the things that we find is that things get so much coverage in London that have no relevance to anyone else. I mean, if you ask most people in Wales what is Crossrail, they don't have a clue what you're talking about. And I think it's hugely important that there's an understanding that there is a world outside London. There are ideas that are generated outside London. I mean, when it came to Brexit back in 2016, I was accused of going on too much about Ireland and the border. Hey ho, this is where we are now. We produced a white paper that said, okay, if we're going to leave the EU, let's stay in the customs union, let's get as much access as we can to the single market, and all of a sudden, it's something that's being said now here. So I think we need to draw on all our resources across the whole of the UK as we look to rebuild our party, and not think that the whole thing that can be done here. It has to be across the whole of the UK.
I come to this conversation as a Labour Party member for 37 years. I joined the Labour Party in Renfrewshire in 1982, and so my formative experiences in the party were of not triumphant New Labour victories, but repeated old Labour defeats in 83, in 87 and 92. And in that sense, Jeremy Corbyn is the 7th Labour leader during my time as a member, so at times like now, that perspective is helpful. I think we've got to recognise the overwhelming sense that the status quo is not working for a significant proportion of the citizens of this country. And whether it's the European elections, where if you look across the continent, the single biggest appetite expressed was a desire for change. Whether it was that referendum back in 2014, why did we win? Because we said not staying in the United Kingdom is the status quo, but saying you can have faster, safer, better change within the UK, or risky, uncertain, costly change outside of the UK. So we need to acknowledge the hunger for change. Politics is partly the art of competitive storytelling. And if we've learned anything in recent years as the currency and character of British politics has changed, it's that emotion and stories matter as much as evidence and statistics. And I think we've got a huge job of work to be done to give people, not least in Scotland, a sense of that we get it. We get it in terms of their pride and passion for their identity as Scots. We get it in terms of their aspirations for themselves and for their kids.
You need a policy identity. You need something that people want to follow and are enthusiastic about. I completely agree with Carwyn and Douglas on that point. But you also need an organisation. And I thought what was interesting about the Brexit Party in Peterborough is what it revealed is it in fact isn't a party. So it didn't have any organisation. So it had fantastic televisual presence, but that didn't actually translate in a by-election. And if we want to, Douglas and I had a conversation about this yesterday, if we want to take what I believe is the essence of the Labour Party forward, a sort of centre-left progressive agenda that cares about educational outcomes and cares about equality and cares about the things that enable people from every background to be successful, access to housing, access to education, access to decent healthcare, access to opportunities, all those things. You need an organisation to underpin that, as well as an ideological framework.
And so where we need reinventing is actually, I think, how we talk to people, and whether we realise that the internal things and the partisanship internally that we care ever so much about, people in the country actually just don't. Now, we do have to deal with some critical internal issues like anti-Semitism. That's obviously very, very important. But insofar as what we're selling to the country, can we sell a vision to the country? And that's where I think the 2017 election was interesting, in that when we put these really innovative and radical ideas on the table, people of my generation, I'm 24 years old, and I have friends who have no involvement in politics and who actually think I'm quite strange for door knocking on a Thursday rather than playing Fortnite. when you speak to them about free tuition, or when you speak to them about nationalisation, or when you speak to them around our what we're going to do with the NHS, and when you connect it with their lives, that's when they come alive. So the biggest challenge, and I'll be very, very honest, and frustrating thing for me as a 24-year-old candidate is, can some of the old guard in the Labour Party get over their egos and the historic animus and get on the same page in terms of a policy vision for the country? And this crisis of knife crime, specifically in London, that's taken lives of my friends, rather than us presenting a vision of how we're going to deal with this in terms of the youth centres, the education sector, yes, and policing, we're busy talking about internal issues that honestly my generation don't care about. How do we get a grips with these really critical issues that affect the lives and of families and people, and how do we sell that vision to the country? If we're not able to do that, then our future is pretty bleak. I think we can.
And I think, whatever my personal opinion of Jeremy Corbyn, and it could not be lower, what he does represent is that kind of change and difference that you're talking about. So I think actually, when you talk about what we're selling to people, people aren't selling what you're buying because they don't trust you. And they don't trust you like they don't trust the Tories. And having knocked on doors in those 5 elections, what I get is cynicism and disengagement. They're all the same. They're all the same. There's no difference between them. They just don't believe you when you talk about nationalisation of the railways or protecting the NHS. What Brexit has done, what the Scottish referendum has done, what the front bench of the Tories have done very successfully, and I also blame Labour for this as well, is just create white noise. You talk about knife crime that really affects people's lives. It does not surprise me that they just don't see politicians providing solutions to those.
I first joined the Labour Party when I was 16, and the first election I worked in was the one that brought Harold Wilson to power. This situation now is so tragic, when I think that 15 years ago there was a centre-left, pro-European, social democratic government which had just won 2 absolutely thumping majorities. And I ask, why did that fail to leave a legacy?